food vendors, I mean, what's happening to the market vendors? How are they going to earn a living now as a spin-off on the fact that tens of thousands of people are now without an income? And the other issue, we have just addressed it at the General Council. We are seeing that the government has introduced armed police into certain schools. What is the consideration, if any, of the government for the fact that all of these ultra-virus dismissals have had on those children of those who have lost their jobs? You're sending children to school now who are hungry, who don't have enough books, who might not have a school bag, who generally is now disadvantaged economically. You're sending them back into the school, and what appears to be an anticipatory act, you're putting armed police in the school to say, we want to deal with school violence. It is all well and good to deal with school violence. Everybody is against school violence. But we have to understand and address very frontally the impact that these dismissals have on larger issues, on other issues within the country. So at this time, I would like to hand over to the chairman of the party, unless there are, well, I suppose we'll take questions after. Yes.
Thank you very much, Deputy Political Leader Sanjeev Guru. Good afternoon to my colleagues at the head table, members of the media. I just want to raise an issue or to give the media an update on the bill that the government introduced in Parliament and that was debated throughout all of the stages and eventually passed, which is the Constitution Amendment Bill, which was further amended at the end of the session to Constitution Amendment Citizenship Bill. The PNM voted against the bill yesterday, even though we told the government that whilst yes, we were prepared to support one aspect of the bill, one clause in the bill, that there were two other clauses that we had serious concerns, and we asked the government whether they can explain its justification for the two clauses in that bill that trouble us. It troubled us violently, if I'm to use that remark. The government, before introducing that bill in the Parliament, informed the country that the purpose of that bill was to allow for persons whose parents and grandparents were citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and that as a result of that they had ancestral connection to Trinidad and Tobago, notwithstanding the fact that they might be living outside of Trinidad and Tobago. The PNM's position is that when we look at other Commonwealth jurisdictions, they allowed, for example, Jamaica, in the United Kingdom, I think in Antigua, and I can't remember the other CARICOM region, that introduced similar types of legislation, but they cap it off at the grandparents level. Whether or not your grandparent was born as a citizen in Trinidad and Tobago as well as your parents, you can apply to become a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. We supported the government's stance with respect to its need for athletic purposes to put persons on our national football team, on our athletic football team to represent the country at various levels. But what troubled us is that the government removed all other restrictions with respect to parents and grandparents, notwithstanding the fact that they are citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, that notwithstanding the fact that they were born outside of Trinidad and Tobago, thereby creating an avenue where persons who have no connection, direct connection to Trinidad and Tobago can now benefit from the amendment that the government would have passed yesterday. During their contribution, the government admitted that the diaspora outside there is somewhere in the region of 500,000 people who can benefit or who has some kind of ancestral link to Trinidad and Tobago, notwithstanding the fact that their parents or grandparents may not have born in Trinidad and Tobago or citizens by descent. So the member for the Wamate Northeast would have asked the government questions with respect to why open this up in such a way that will allow hundreds of thousands of people to apply to become citizens, notwithstanding the fact that they may have had absolutely no connection to Trinidad and Tobago, not knowing about our culture, not knowing about anything about this country. And the government, notwithstanding the fact that we've asked for explanation, did not provide any explanation whatsoever. As a matter of fact, what troubled us during the debate is that the government admitted that this is just not only for sporting purposes, but it is for employment purposes, for cultural purposes. The government complained that they're brain drain in Trinidad and Tobago, where we do not have access to certain professionals for certain fields in this country. And this amendment that they would have passed yesterday would allow for persons who may have some kind of connection to Trinidad and Tobago to apply to become lawyers and doctors and what have you. I am not aware that in Trinidad and Tobago we have any scarcity for doctors and lawyers and professionals. As a matter of fact, we have to create opportunities for so many of our citizens who are qualified in some of those professional fields. And yesterday we heard from the government that this is not only for sporting purposes, but it is to allow for persons to come into the country to apply to be part of various professions. The PNM expressed concerns, and we told the government, Mr. Imbut would have circulated an amendment saying that we do not support two of the provisions, that we would support one part of the bill that would allow for persons to come and join our national team and to represent Trinidad and Tobago at the highest level. But Mr. Imbut also raised another important issue, that notwithstanding this amendment and notwithstanding what the government is saying, that the World Athletic Body as well as FIFA, their rules prevent persons whose parent or grandparents may not have been born in a particular country from representing a country. So the government is saying that this will open up an avenue, the amendment that they introduced yesterday in Parliament and passed, that this will open up an avenue for persons to come and represent Trinidad at the highest level. But when one examines the rules of FIFA and the World Athletic Association, those persons would still be prevented from representing Trinidad and Tobago. But the government has a constitutional majority in Parliament. We expressed concerns. We asked the government to make certain amendments, and we will support the bill. They did not make the amendments as we suggested, and on that basis, the PNM voted against that bill yesterday. Because at the end of the day, when one considers that over 500 or 600,000 people who are living outside of Trinidad and Tobago, not having any connection to Trinidad and Tobago, can stand to benefit from this, I think this can have serious implications for this country. The other issue is the stand your ground bill that the government has been engaged in so-called public consultation. And I say so-called public consultation because what appears to be consultation by the UNC government, in my respectful view and the view of the PNM, it is not proper public consultation, because you cannot say to the population that we are consulting with you, but you're only prepared to visit UNC constituencies. And when you examine the consultation, you are recognizing that you have persons who, for one reason or the other, visited and participated in the consultation and make political statements in support of the bill, as though they have been planted there to make the statements that they were placed there to do. And it troubles me that the Attorney General, the Minister of Justice, and the entire cabinet would be prepared only to go to UNC constituencies to have these types of events under the guise of public consultation, and not having the respect for citizens who would have voted for the PNM, but they are citizens and who can stand to be impacted by the passage of this bill when it is introduced and passed in the Parliament. The PNM government has been looking at the bill, and what we can see is that there is no fundamental difference between what the government is proposing in that bill and what already exists in the common law of Trinidad and Tobago. As a matter of fact, we can tell the population that what the government has been saying to you with respect to stand your ground, when one examines the clauses in that bill, it is absolutely different from how the government is selling the particular bill. The government is presenting the bill as though it is some panacea to crime, and that once it is introduced, citizens will have arms to be able to shoot back at criminals and what have you. But when one examines the bill, it says something completely different. It does not deviate away from the common law as exists, where a person standing in the public or in their home, they can use reasonable force to defend themselves and to defend their families. The bill is saying no different. There are two things that the bill introduced that is new, which is the creation of an offense that is called home invasion, which is already captured in the criminal laws of this country, but it's just the creation of a new offense that is called home invasion. But under the Larceny Act, you have burglary, you have housebreaking and larceny, you have housebreaking with intent. So even if you do not have an offense of home invasion, the mere fact that you unlawfully enters into someone's home is already captured in legislation in Trinidad and Tobago. So one new thing that the bill is introducing is a new offense, a new criminal offense of home invasion. And the second, what I would say that is new, is that it says that a citizen will not have the duty to retreat, but you have the responsibility to use reasonable force in defense of yourself, same as exists under the common law. Nothing different. Now, I am saying that the government has been selling this bill to give people the impression that once this bill is passed, criminals will be afraid to enter your home, that you can now take action to defend yourself and shoot at them and what have you. I can tell you that when you examine clause 7 of that bill, it does not absolve anyone from being charged if the police is of the view that the force that has been used by the citizen is disproportionate to the threat as existed at that point in time. As a matter of fact, clause 7 of the bill stipulates, and I will read, that when determining whether defensive force was reasonable in the circumstances, the court shall take into account the nature of the force or the nature of the threat, the extent to which the use of force was imminent, and whether there was other means available to respond to the potential use of force, the occupant's role in the incident, whether any party to the incident used or threatened to use a weapon, a firearm, or an explosive device, the size, the age, and the physical capabilities of the parties to the incident, and whether any party to the incident is a person with a mental disorder within the meaning of the Mental Health Act. All of these are some of the issues that the court will take into consideration to determine whether the citizen would have used proportionate force in defense of himself. But you have to be charged and you have to be placed before the court, and it is the court that makes that determination. This is not what the Prime Minister and key spokespersons of the government have been telling the people of this country where this stand your ground bill is concerned. It is completely different. As a matter of fact, it is the Minister of Defense that is on record saying that you can shoot someone who is running against you and running away from you. Shoot them in the back. Is that what this bill is saying under clause 7? Where the court has to take into consideration all of these matters to determine whether the force that was used by the citizen was disproportionate. So citizens have to be very careful that they don't take chain up from the Prime Minister, from her Attorney General and key government spokesperson, because these are matters that the court will take into consideration in determining whether or not disproportionate force has been used. And when one takes into consideration statements made by the Prime Minister about blow them into pieces, shoot them in the back by her Minister of Defense. And when the Minister of Homeland Security is saying that we cancel the body cameras with the TTPS and that he is not in support of body cameras being worn by members of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, when the members of the cabinet is saying that we will create a policy for gated community, I am telling the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago that this so-called Stand Your Ground bill that is being introduced in the parliament must be taken into consideration with all of these matters that I'm referring to. The creation of gated communities. Shoot them in the back, blow them up into pieces. Don't use body cameras. What is the government attempting to do in Trinidad and Tobago? Is the government manipulating the fears of the people of Trinidad and Tobago to prevent what appears to be the panacea for solving crime, but that may well result in more violence taking place in this country? And finally, let me say that the citizens of this country must take note of that section in the bill which stipulates that the court has matters to take into consideration in determining whether disproportionate force has been used by citizens in defense of themselves. And this is not what the government has been saying to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. The PNM is about to start our public consultation, and these are matters that we intend to put into the public domain so that the citizens of this country can be properly educated on what the government is attempting to do with this Stand Your Ground bill. So these are the matters that we want to discuss with you, and we are now open for questioning. We have Senator Amy Brown, MP Com Imbert, who is our deputy political leader, as well as deputy political leader Sanjeev Budu, and we are here to answer any question that you may have on the matters that we discussed.
Can you tell us consultations?
This, we intend to start our consultation next week. We have not yet decided. But it might be a good idea to start where the UNC decided not to go.
Now, the Prime Minister considered that there would be a probably awards, and like the fact that the independent could be cancelled. What are your views on this and the reasons given by the government? Basically, what do you think about the Republic Day Award?
Well, we look forward to the Republic Day Award function. As a matter of fact, we look forward to the Independence Parade and all of the activities with respect to independence. So if the Prime Minister is now patriotic and her government has now decided to become very patriotic to celebrate national events, then we tell the Prime Minister welcome and congratulations, and we hope that you continue to be patriotic to Trinidad and Tobago.
And may I add that we are very pleased that the circumstances that existed that caused the cancellation of the Independence Day Parade no longer exists, thereby allowing the government to have Republic Day celebration. Very happy about that.
Sure, definitely.
Good afternoon, members of the media, and thank you for the question, because it really, in the Trinidad and Tobago context, it is very unusual that you would de-emphasize Independence Day and then place this emphasis on Republic Day. Every country has different traditions. So in a country like India, another part of the Commonwealth, they actually put more focus traditionally on their Republic Day celebrations. Each country has its own traditions. In Trinidad and Tobago, we tend to celebrate Independence Day much more emphatically. That's also reflected in our overseas missions. They normally will have what we consider a National Day event, which takes place on Independence Day. And many of them actually did go ahead, our missions overseas, to host Independence Day celebrations and events when here at home, the government decided to cancel the major part of the observances. But I just want to add to what our deputy political leader, Budu, said. In part, the reaction of the population of Trinidad and Tobago, led by the People's National Movement and several other stakeholders who spoke out of concern for the impact, the thought process behind cancellation of the military parade and the impact on the sociology and the psyche of particularly our children. That may have had some role to play in the government now deciding, notwithstanding the fact that they canceled the important Independence Day celebrations, to say, well, yes, we will go ahead and have Republic Day observances and, of course, the national awards. And absolutely, we will be paying very close attention to the lists and announcements that are made with respect to those awards, as is the duty of the opposition of Trinidad and Tobago. So I just wanted to make that.
Let me say something. A lot of things. Based on the question, what I'm seeing is a blurring of the lines. If you've been to the parade, you see it's the president who inspects the troops because she is the commander-in-chief. And when the various divisions march off, they salute the president. Okay? The government pays for it, but it's really a presidential function supported by the government. Similarly, the national awards are given out by the president at President's house. The government, the prime minister in this particular case, will decide who would get the awards, but the actual ceremony is a presidential ceremony. And the other thing is, if you've ever been to that, you will see that in the lineup is the Chief Justice and the Prime Minister. As the person receives their award, it's pinned on them by the President, and then they go and shake hands with the Chief Justice and the Prime Minister. The Chief Justice is the chairman of the committee that makes recommendations for national awards. So when you say that the Prime Minister has decided to hold national awards, you're blurring the lines. These are really presidential functions. And I think we've allowed the government to get away with that, as if it's their function. These are national events and they're presidential functions. Okay?
We've expressed the concerns of the People's National Movement and all right-thinking citizens. Our nation has found itself being drawn deeper and deeper into a crisis, a regional crisis, largely of our own making. When I say our making, I'm not talking about the right-thinking citizens now, I'm talking about the government led by the Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar, with no clear rationale or justification or benefit to this nation. This government continues to make reckless statements and comments that devalue CARICOM, that add tension to a very important relationship between two neighboring states, a small one, Trinidad and Tobago, and a very large one, Venezuela, across which, that border across which very important interests lie with respect to the energy sector, with respect to the use of our maritime space, fisheries, movement of commercial vessels, search and rescue operations, a wide range of interests, and of course, movement of migrants that occur depending on factors on either side, and security interests as well, which are quite genuine. So to see now this has gotten to the point when these relationships were responsibly and prudently managed and tensions were kept to a minimum, to see where they are being ratcheted up week after week, to the point where you now have government ministers, cabinet ministers on both sides of the border, resulting to petty and childish name calling. No, we don't agree that people are calling the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago by any derogatory name, but we've contributed to a downward spiral. And the point of a government is to be the custodian of our image and our diplomatic affairs, and Kamla Prasad Bisesa and her cabinet are doing a terrible job of that. The People's National Movement, we will always be the voice of reason, of intelligence, of prudent and wise management of these matters, and we are rooted in international law, Treaty of Chaguaramas, respect for CARICOM, all the things that this government is de-emphasizing at this time. So these matters did arise during our General Council meeting. Members expressed disappointment and dismay about what is happening, but we will do our job to hold the government to account and to give an alternate avenue where when there's a heads of government meeting, we should be properly represented. When there's a summit involving CARICOM, heads of government, Trinidad and Tobago should be in the front row at the head table, not at home doing God knows what, back in not involved to a degree. And when there's a movement or a crisis that involves regional security and implications for regional security, the CARICOM state and the Prime Minister, who has lead responsibility for regional security, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, should be the first one to bring CARICOM together to form a common position and to share information accordingly. What she has done is the exact opposite of that. So not only is she not fulfilling her responsibilities in Port of Spain and to this nation, she's also capitulating and not fulfilling her responsibilities to CARICOM. This is not fly by night. These are definitive responsibilities that she has as the sitting Prime Minister of this country. She's failing.
So given what we've seen taking place with Venezuela, Trinidad and CARICOM now, we're speaking about this right now. I'm wondering, are we too far gone in terms of those diplomatic channels based on the statements we're seeing coming out from both camps? Is that a relationship that is going to be salvaged?
It must be salvaged. As I say, this relationship is critical to both countries. And so, yes, a lot of damage has been done. Yes, the trajectory is very negative and worrisome. But fortunately, this country has, as its leader of the opposition, Mrs. Penelope Beckles-Robinson, who has far more diplomatic and foreign policy experience, literally, than the sitting Prime Minister of this time, who has been kept well up to date by her team, who's monitoring and responding as appropriate. And it is our vision that in the soonest possible time, whenever this democracy would allow, we would once again be able to pick up the pieces and quickly restore the prestige and position of Trinidad and Tobago as a mature and lawful and prudent broker of regional and global relationships. We've always punched above our weight class. Now we're in an arena that is worrisome to everyone who's paying attention. So we are very concerned, but the direct answer to your question, the PNM has done this before. We've repaired damages before. You would recall the last time Kamla Prasad Bisesa was Prime Minister, tremendous damage was done to our relationship with Jamaica, as well as key members of CARICOM with comments like, "We are not an ATM machine." This is after a natural disaster in our region. Comments like that were made. There were threats of boycotts and other issues, particularly in the Jamaican scenario. And it was a PNM Prime Minister who, Dr. Keith Rowley, made his first trip was to Kingston, Jamaica, specifically to try, and he was successful in that regard, to repair the damage that was done. Well, now the damage being done is so much worse and the implications are so much greater unfortunately, we have the capabilities to do what will have to be done for the future of Trinidad and Tobago.
The Venezuelan embassy issued a statement today saying that 9 Venezuelan fishermen were terrorized by U.S. troops in Venezuelan waters, and our own fishermen have expressed concerns. Do you think those worries are legitimate for fishermen to be feeling that way? Our fishermen.
Well, are the fishermen worried? Absolutely, they are. I speak to them quite frequently. Yes, you've covered it on the news. So, am I to tell them whether their concerns are legitimate or not? The fact of the matter is the output, the declarations, the statements, and actions of our Prime Minister and the government of the day have contributed to a downward negative spiral between Trinidad and Tobago, a neighboring country with which we share the Gulf of Paria, other maritime space that these fishermen depend on to earn a living. So what you're seeing is voluntarily of their own, in the interest of their safety, they are deciding to either fish closer to the shoreline, not go out at all, limit themselves in their ability to feed the nation and provide for their families. To what end? For what benefit? Who stands to gain from this? That's the question. Who stands to gain from this? Certainly not the ordinary people of this country and not our fisher folks. So we must be concerned. Our hearts must go out to them. And when options on shore are diminishing for gainful employment, you see what's been happening. We discussed that today at length at General Council with all these dismissals and firings. So now on land and on the sea, opportunities are being reduced for no good purpose due to the actions of a government that seems to have no compass or direction.
I thought they were going to balance the budget. So now it's a deficit. I'm hearing it's 15 billion, could be 20 billion. If it's in that range, that means that our debt is going to skyrocket. It's not good for us. But I thought they had all the answers and we're going to balance the budget, so I'll wait and see. Maybe that's a rumor.
So now with your experience as being a Minister of Finance, how much, I think you just alluded to it there, but I just wanted you to expand a bit more. How much of a deficit budget would be too much for the country to be able to sustain?
I would say anything above 4 or 5 billion. You know, there's a standard rule of thumb, 2 to 3% of GDP. So GDP is somewhere between 180, 200 billion, probably about 180. So you're looking at maybe 3-4 billion max. So if you go to 15, you as I said, you have to understand you have to borrow all of that. And the local commercial banks are overexposed to the government. So it's difficult. It has always been difficult. So by having a budget with a huge deficit, you're just creating more problems. And my understanding is that huge deficit does not take into account all the promises they made, like the 10%, for example. That runs into the billions, another 2-3 billion per year, 20-30 billion in back pay. That $15 billion deficit that I'm hearing about, hopefully it's not true, does not include back pay and wage increases. Okay? It's not a good thing. Let's hope the rumors are untrue. Okay?
Thank you all very much.
Comprehensive. We good.
I think we're good, yeah.